What's up, everybody? Welcome to Under the Arch Sports. I'm Eric Hobbs.
And I'm David Woldingen.
And this week we are talking about the 5 biggest questions facing Mizzou football heading into the 2022 season. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So today we're talking about number 5, the 5th biggest question facing Mizzou going into this season. And that is, how does Mizzou replicate the production that they lose with Tyler Badie? Can the running backs do that as a group? So, David, what's your initial thought on trying to make up for Tyler Badie's production?
Honestly, it's going to require 2 things, in my opinion, because I don't think you can replicate what Badie did without having another NFL caliber running back, in all honesty, because I mean that's what he was. He went in the 6th round of the NFL draft. However, I think there are ways to get the same type of production, but there are 2 things, and one of them is one of our points later on in our films, and that's the offensive line. How well can they do? Can they get any push on the line? When you have Badie, you didn't have to worry about that. Now you do, because you don't necessarily know what you have as a running back. And number 2 is, how do you utilize them in the passing game? So it's going to be interesting to see what Drink does now that Badie's not around. Does he start using more short passes, out routes, things like that, wheel routes, just dump off routes, and get the running back more active in the pass game as well?
Yeah, in terms of who's going to be the starter on day one, David, I think the odds-on favorite is probably Nathaniel Pete. He is a transfer from Stanford who is coming home. He went to Rockbridge High School in Columbia. And a year ago, he had 404 yards and averaged 5.1 yards a carry, which, not bad numbers. 87 of those 404 yards, 1 carry against USC. He had a nice game against Oregon. Other than that, the only other game where he cracked 50 yards was against Vandy. Didn't get tons of reps as the season wound down. So I don't think he is, he's definitely not your guy to get to lean on for 25 carries a game, like you did with Badie a season ago. And even going back to 2020 and Larry Roundtree, I think Coach Drink doesn't have a choice but to look elsewhere besides the running back position. Because let's face it, he leaned on his running backs heavily his first 2 years as the Mizzou coach.
Yeah, and based off that, I could see him incorporating, especially now that our wide receiver core has a huge skill set with speed and their ability, I could see him incorporating a lot of different jet sweep type plays to help the running backs out and maybe open up some misdirection and stuff so they can get going.
Well, it kind of reminds me of going back to the Pinkel days when we'd hear so often how the short passing game was an extension of the running game. That was something that Dave Yost, Gary Pinkel, they all like to say that, and they used it that way. And I'd be curious to see if they might try to use like a tunnel screen. Back in the day, Pinkel liked to use it with Martin Rucker, Chase Kaufman, Rucker in particular, as I recall. I'd be curious to see trying to do that with Dominic Lovett. See if his speed and just a wall of blockers, if that can just be good for 10 yards a pop. I think that'd be very interesting to see. I would like to find out because I think there's potential there. And I think doing stuff like that can kind of keep your linebackers, your outside linebackers in particular, just kind of on their toes, where any sort of motion, particularly from Lovett, may distract them from a running back going up the middle, right?
It'll also help with the passing game in general because it keeps them honest and keeps them away from blitzing because they get burned too if they try to come.
Now, I was just going to say, looking at the rest of the roster, in terms of who else Mizzou has, BJ Harris had, he showed a couple of flashes last season. You also have Elijah Young, who has shown flashes, got some extended action in the bowl game against Army. I believe it was 75 yards carrying and another 30 yards or so receiving. Had a solid game there. David, one guy that a lot of guys, a lot of fans are high on is Michael Cox.
Yeah, he played in 6 games, 18 carries, 150 yards last year. Now, a lot of this is mop up time and things like that, but he showed great potential, and I could see him earning plenty of playing time, especially with the fact that we need depth in the running back position. So he could easily get on the field and do some damage down the road.
Yeah, I think there's one guy that I am really excited about, and that is incoming freshman TAVORUS Jones out of Texas, I believe El Paso, off the top of my head. He is, yeah, he was a highly rated 4-star, and I think he is going to compete for significant playing time from the get-go. I don't think he'll be the starter day one. If you're talking, second half of the season, would not surprise me if he was the starter.
Yeah, and again, we using the term starter loosely this year, I think is the key, because I think you're going to see 2 or 3 backs get pretty even playing time, because there's not a dominant back, at least that we know of right now. I mean, you could see one of them emerge later on. I could see Drink go to that person more often, but until that happens, I wouldn't be surprised if he throws a bunch of different backs out there to see what they have. Not to mention, are they backs that have good hands? Can he use them in passing situations? I wouldn't be so surprised if each one of them has different temperaments when they go out there. It'll be real interesting to see how he utilizes all these guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. The first 4 or 5 games, especially, I'd be stunned if we saw a running back get 25, 30 carries in any game, especially Louisiana Tech, just early on, Abilene Christian. Those are games where I think that'll be just tinkering and finding out. And hopefully, honestly, I hope all 5 guys that we've mentioned have a decent amount of carries at the running back position. And I hope to see an extension of the short passing game as an extension of the running game. But yeah, I think the key takeaway when answering the question, can the running backs replicate Tyler Badie's production? No individual can. As a group, I think they need to come close with the help of the short passing game.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. Anyway, that's all for this video. Stay tuned for topic number 4 tomorrow. Thank you for watching.